Hello.
Hello, I'm Lily,
I'm Abby.
and we're kind of doing an Instagram live chat today to talk about some of our favourite cycling zines, slash those cycling zines that we currently have in our house.
Yeah, this is not the full amount of zines we own, but a lot of them are in the library at the moment.
We don't own the ones in the library.
No.
Some of them are in the studio. Basically,
Yeah.
these are the zines directly in front of us, and we're working with what we've got.
Yeah.
Hi people. And we're kind of chatting about them today specifically because this weekend is the virtual cycle touring festival, which was originally going to be run in Lancashire next month, but they've shifted all the events online, obviously because of the situation. And so part of that is we're running a kind of collaborative zine call out thing, trying to get lots of different people's stories about cycle touring. So we'll talk a little bit about the zines in front of us, and then we'll talk about how you can contribute to the collaborative cycle touring scene. So we're doing the zines in chronological order of when they came into our lives.
Yeah.
So, Abby.
Okay, so the first one doesn't look much like a zine. It's a huge book, but basically it's half bike maintenance manual. This is Chainbreaker, by the way, Chainbreaker bike book. And then half of it is the zines that this book sort of came from. I think this is the first bike manual we ever bought. We bought it in Word Power, which is now Lighthouse Books in Edinburgh. But yeah, it's fantastic. We took it on tour with us, which seems like a mad thing to have done. Like, you can see this is a hefty book.
I don't think we realised that YouTube or the internet was a thing, so we were like, well, we don't know that much about bike maintenance, we'll just take a book and then we'll be prepared.
It did come in handy,
really helpful, yeah.
But maybe not the most sensible thing to take. But
no.
Do you want to talk a bit more?
So I think this was maybe as well partly our kind of introduction to zines, and it's a very traditional, so it's kind of, the zine is reproduced in the back, so it's almost like a kind of archive of the zine itself. But it was really our kind of first introduction to zines, and it's a very trad DIY zine. It's totally cut and paste, hand drawn. There's some amazing content in it and some really useful stuff. So I kind of stuck some post-it notes on the bits that I really like. So this is a segment called Don't Get Hit. And what it is, it's beautifully handwritten. Look at that handwriting. Who can achieve handwriting like that?
This is what I aspire to do.
But it's a set of tips basically on how to minimise your chances of getting hit on the roads, which is something of concern to us. And it's lots of really useful advice as well. Things I kind of I'm a big advocate of, riding where people expect you to be and being predictable, breaking the rules when it feels safer, that sort of thing.
None of it is about wearing high vis, strangely
enough, yeah. There's useful tips about things like dealing with carpal tunnel syndrome. I know we've had very dodgy limp wrists from cycling. And obviously lots of really useful bike maintenance tips. So that's our first kind of zine at the back of a book, which we would definitely recommend. So the next one we've got, this is the first in a series of zines. This is called Londonderry, and it's by a group called, and I'm going to butcher this because my French accent is appalling, Le Derala? I don't know.
Not bad.
But it basically collects a bunch of things that were done at a conference called Vélo, as in vélo obviously is bike in French, but it's the L as in her, and then O conference. So it's a really unusual zine in that it's bound with an inner tube, which I am low-key obsessed with, and has this beautiful kind of screen printed piece of fabric on the front, so you can really feel how handmade it is. It's in a mixture of French and English. We can only really talk intelligently about the English language sections because our French comprehension is not poor, but really doesn't stretch to complex ideas.
I think we'd struggle. Yeah. We do struggle.
We do struggle. But yeah, it's a very a good. It's a good example of a zine collecting information and stuff from an event.
It's also good in terms of its physicality. I think zines are lovely because you hold them in your hand and they're just, and I don't know, something about the fabric and the rubber on it is very
good,
very appealing. And I mean, this one, most of the English language bits talk a lot about the history of cycling and feminism in cycling, so it's really cool if you're interested in that sort of, historical cyclofeminism, they call it in the zine. So yeah, good. Cool. Oh, we also, I've got to say, we got these from Microcosm, which is a publisher in the States. The postage is super expensive, and I feel like we would buy everything they ever produced if we could, but
you can also often find Microcosm published stuff in like good independent bookstores. So like we've got some Microcosm stuff we got from Lighthouse again in Edinburgh.
Yeah, and a few in London
as well.
In
London, yeah, like Houseman's and stuff. So look out for. I even feel like Microcosm's like publishing logo is like bike related. I think you can see it just on here. It's like a little kind of chain rings.
These ones I don't think are published by Microcosm.
No, they're not. But that's what we got them through.
Yeah. Oh, right. So this is the second one actually in the same series. So we bought these both at the same time because, they're bike-related zines. This one specifically is about bike touring. I'll hold it up there.
We bought this one. I think we bought these zines at the time because we'd just spoken to the publishers about maybe writing the book that we ended up writing, and we had this massive panic where we were just like feeling really uninformed and really like out of our depth,
and like how do we stake claim to cycle?
And we just wanted to read as much as we could, and like read lots of just like different stuff and feel like, I don't know, for me, reading and interacting zines is a really important way of like feeling in a community or like engaged with things in that community in like a complex way. Yeah,
definitely. Again, this is in French and English and Spanish, I think, in this one as well. What was I? What were you going to say about this one? I've lost my train of thought.
This isn't a zine.
Oh, that's what.
So at the start, they're really clear that this is like a book, which is interesting because like it feels like a zine, and I think there's all this like interplay between like, is this a book, is this a zine, and I sort of understand why it can be important to like make a distinction between the two, especially when you're departing from like zine values in terms of like making significant money from it, or like how you produce it and the feel of it. But like it feels zine enough, and it's at least it originated in zines, so they call it a book, I call it a zine still, but like I respect their definition of it as a book. Like this is a collaborative one, which we kind of should have said, like it's made up of like lots of different contributions, which we love, and is a really nice way to get like lots of different voices in a zine. It's got some great stuff like about like touring when you're someone who has periods.
Again, it's about feminism, a lot of it, isn't it?
Yeah, but it spans beyond that, and like I like that the start of this scene really acknowledges that like the voices in here, although they're diverse, are still missing like voices, and like they don't, it doesn't, just because it's a kind of like a zine of diverse voices or things that look specifically at like non-cis male experiences of cycle touring, it's not like, it doesn't then just cover all other experiences. There's like a really great bit about like from this person called Dev about cycle touring with lupus, which is like a really good narrative in it. I love this bit about like kind of like ableism in cycling, and this person talking about how they had to like slow down when they were doing a lot of like cycling because of an injury, and they're like, cycling culture's reliance on performance in a narrow range of activities as shorthand for how authentically someone is participating is ableist and exclusionary. It fails to celebrate the many different and most importantly valid ways that people build relationships with the world's most beautiful machine. And I think that's something that we've both felt, because like we are not athletic cyclists, we are not really leisure cyclists, and both of us have really struggled in this context to keep cycling, because like we cycle for transport, and unless we're like running errands and doing shopping and commuting to work, or like going places or travelling with our bikes, it's really hard.
It is really hard. I feel like on a bike tour we've always got a destination, a goal to get to, so that's what sort of pushes us through.
And there's also that feeling of movement, you know, you're going somewhere, whereas I feel like cycling for the pleasure of cycling, which sounds completely antithetical to say as someone who advocates so much for cycling.
I know.
I've been making these newsletters for work where I'm just like, everybody cycles, cycling is great, and I'm just sitting at home being like, I don't want to cycle, unless I'm going somewhere. So like balancing those things is really interesting. And there's also a great little segment in it about unpacking the pannier of privilege, which builds on Peggy McIntosh's like knapsack of privilege, looking at like white privilege, into cycle touring, and I think it's really important that that's kind of like the work that like white cycle tourers and white people writing about cycle touring have to do, and it's a really good kind of elaboration and building on that notion specific to cycling culture and bikes. So that's that.
Yeah.
Up next, so this is described as a chapbook.
A chapbook.
But I feel like it's within the sphere of zines sufficiently to be talked about. This is from Mary Ann Thomas and Daniel Bayliss, and this is about their kind of 4-month cycle tour of India. Hello to people joining us now, as we're about halfway through the collection of zines in front of us.
Yeah.
So I got this through Mary Ann Thomas's website. They're an amazing writer and like are really generous in their writing, and an amazing cycle tourer, and just like do really cool stuff.
Again, we bought this because we were thinking about the beginnings of our own book, and we were just like, we need to read as much as possible from other cycle tourers.
And I think also like we'd been following them for ages,
Yeah.
and suddenly they had it available online again, and we were like, go. But yeah, it's full of kind of like postcards. That's how they describe it from their trip. So like kind of short extracts on different ideas and topics, accompanied by like stunning photos and visuals.
It's really beautifully written. I feel like I wish my writing was as beautiful as this. The description is fantastic, and yeah, I think the postcard style of it really sort of just gives you a chance to sort of, I don't know, what am I trying to go for? Like,
it's not. I like the way the postcards structure it, like thematically, as opposed to like chronologically in a narrative. So yeah, that's that one.
So this one does describe itself as a zine, but we would possibly say it was more of a book.
It's definitely, but it's got an ISBN, like, come on people.
Again, published by Microcosm. It's fantastic though. So this one is Bike Witty, Money, Class and Bicycling. So it's a lot of little sort of collaborative essays. Let me see if I can sort of get a flick through. About class and poverty and cycling, and yeah, I think it's such an important thing to talk about. I think class especially is something we just don't emerge enough in terms of cycle touring. You know, everyone always talks about how it's so cheap to just, you know, push off and you can get a bike for this much and that's you gone, but there's so many other things to consider when pushing out on a cycle tour.
And I think like, my only criticism of this zine, and it's kind of like what I was saying to you before, is that like these people are talking about their experiences as like working class cyclists or as people who have experienced poverty, and I think that's amazing, but I also think like it should be also the responsibility of like middle class and upper class people who are cycling and cycle touring to like talk about class too, because I think it's not done enough because of a discomfort or an embarrassment about it.
I think when we were
or a desire not to acknowledge it, you know?
I think when we were cycle touring, and we write about this a bit in the book, we were very aware that we always had a home to go back to and parents who could support us, and
if we needed to,
and
all of that sort of stuff underpins our ability. And I think it's that thing of like, it's so easy to ignore something or to not talk about something when it's something that you have like in like a privileged position. That's like one of the natures of privilege. So like I think like talking about that and like being honest about it and the ways that your cycling or your cycle touring is possible, and like and I think this zine does a really good job as well of like talking about that balance between like legitimate and illegitimate cycling in terms of like leisure cycling versus like cycling for transport, which is a really like important thing to talk about, and which there's a couple of books that we've got as well that deal with that and that I think are great. But yeah, I think the point and the thing that we love about zines is that they can take you to those like uncomfortable places and really challenge you and like push you.
Definitely. Oh, and we got this one from Houseman's, I think in London.
Yeah,
in case you're wondering
like
where
to bookstore in London. That's where we got that one from.
Okay.
And last up, so this is the most recent cycling zine that we received, or that we own, I guess. And we got this through the post like 3 days ago because we support Cyclista on Patreon, which is something that I 100% suggest all of you do if you're able. This is a really great zine that's kind of like focused, well, it's the second in a series. It's focused on sharing knowledge and like elevating the stories of like Black and Indigenous people and people of colour and women, trans and femme folk in cycling. So this particular issue focuses on like DIY bike culture, and I love that because like for me there's such this like intense intersection between like my cycling and my zine making and like this notion of like DIY culture that's really important, and I really like the way that this zine kind of like emerges that and what it leaves me with, as well as like the really kind of like generous stories and contributions to the people who have kind of submitted to the zine. Just it's a kind of like a collaborative zine with like different essays and stories and pictures and poems. What it leaves me with is like an impulse to like do and ride and like elevate other people's voices and just like make more zines and
get it more and go out into the community a bit more. I think I was just like, oh, I'm gonna start a ride, I mean, to be fair, like,
we've always talked about like when we came back to Kirkcaldy, we'd start like a women trans femme bike club and like do that.
Or like a bike packing club, and I just want to be fair, the main thing it made me think was I need to wash the rims on my bike because I haven't been looking after it very well.
There's like a segment in it from Jenny from London Bike Kitchen that's like the 3 bare minimum things you can do for like bike maintenance.
We have not been doing
like,
like
the shade of it all.
But yeah, it's a fantastic like collaboration of lots of really great voices. We'd 100%.
Oh yeah, and the other reason I'd suggest like for like joining their Patreon is that like aside from the zine, Christina who runs it is like does like reading lists and like or like suggested reading and is really generous with like sharing good content and like curating stuff. So it's like a really valuable resource out with the zine as well. So. That's kind of the zines that were in front of us.
So for the Cycle Touring Festival, we are looking for contributions to a collaborative zine, like some of the ones we just showed you.
Like some of the ones we just showed you, except that this one will be completely digital on a canvas.
Yes. Yeah, completely digital. So it's great because it opens it up to a lot more people. We are not gonna we're not just gonna be UK based, we can have submissions from all around the world, which is fantastic. And yeah, it's just on the theme of, the theme is cycle touring close to home, wherever that is for you. But it can just be about anything cycle touring at all. You don't have to be a pro cycle tourer, you could have just done like a 2-day trip or a one,
Or it could be about like even the things that are stopping you from cycle touring.
Yeah.
I think articulating barriers and stuff is like important work and important to do. But the point is, so we're looking for, it's going to be a digital zine, but we're still going to do it kind of roughly in A5 pages, which means you've got a variety of options in terms of how you submit, depending on like what tech and stuff is available to you. You can write just what you want to say as a Word document and we can help you format it. You can just send us photos, you can